Underrated, ahead of his time, incredibly talented. These are some of the things that come to mind when you think about the King of Harts, Owen Hart. And last week, Vice had showed us the Darkside of the Ring episode of Owen Hart, the tragic passing of Owen Hart. And we got to hear Martha Hart's side of the story, her and her family's side of the story, finally, after 20-somewhat years. And there was two things that I took from this documentary right now. And there's two topics that I want to talk about. And that is, should the show have continued? And should Owen Hart be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? We're going to talk about that on this right here. I want to thank you for tuning in to Take It Home TV, where we ring that bell on the pro wrestling world. I am your host, the host that covers the most, Jimmy J. I want to get right into it right away, and I want to talk about Owen Hart briefly before we get into this documentary and before we get into these topics. Owen Hart was an incredible athlete. You can't take that away from him. You look at his matches. When he first started out in the WWE as the Blue Blazer, and then later on in his career as he developed into the Rocket Owen Hart, and then obviously the King of Hearts Owen Hart when he won the 1994 King of the Ring, and then eventually becoming his own star after Bret left the business after that Montreal quote-unquote screw job that happened in 1997. Owen was the sole survivor, the Blackheart, and he still maintained his image and still did a damn good job in that ring. He was terribly underrated. I mean, Owen was a guy that you could have in the ring with anybody, and he could make that person shine. Owen was that damn good. He could put over anybody in that ring. He was definitely ahead of his time. And if you look at the matches that he had with the British Bulldog and with Shawn Michaels, you can see just that. You can see that athleticism, that Hart family tradition. You know, you look at the Hart family, and there's so many members, and every single one of them know how to wrestle. Thanks to Stu Hart, thanks to the training in the dungeon. But Owen had something special. He had that charisma. He had the attitude. He had the timing that was just so perfect in that ring. And you can't really compare it with many others. Even nowadays, you can't compare it. You know, I think about this event, Over the Edge 1999, and I remember actually watching the event on pay-per-view. And it was rare that I got an opportunity to watch a pay-per-view back in the day because, listen, money was tight when I was growing up. I was begging my parents to please let me order this event. This was one of those events back in the day that I had an opportunity to watch because, you know what? My parents said, you know what? We have a little extra money. We can order it. We can pay for it. Here it is. And I was sitting on the couch, and then the TV went blank. right when this happened, and it was black, and I thought there was something wrong with the cable, and then it came back on, and then we hear Jim Ross in that chilling announcement that he had made right before that other chilling announcement that he had made that Owen had passed away. So, folks, right now I want to take you back to some clips that Darkside of the Ring had posted in his documentary of Owen Hart. I want to take you back to that tragic day of 1999, Over the Edge, when Jim Ross had made this announcement. Take a look.
The Blue Blazer, as we know, as Owen Hart, was going to make a very spectacular superhero-like entrance from the rafters, and something went terribly wrong here. Jerry Lawler back joining me here. King, I was just reiterating the fans, this is not a part of the show. We're here to entertain and have fun, but this is neither.
No, it doesn't look good at all.
And I have the unfortunate responsibility to let everyone know that Owen Hart has died. Owen Hart has tragically died from that accident here tonight.
I don't envy Jim Ross at all, this day especially. He had 10 seconds. 10 seconds to announce that Owen Hart had passed away. What do you think was going through his head at the moment? What do you think was going through the minds of everybody else that just heard that announcement?
How did this happen? He didn't commit suicide. Was there foul play? Is it an accident? We don't know, so leave everything the way it is till we figure this out. No, we'll just go ahead and have 4 or 5 more matches. That they didn't stop Kansas City was bullshit.
The fact that Vince just discarded Owen like he was a piece of garbage and scraped his dead body off the mat and sent wrestlers out to wrestle on a ring where Owen's blood was, and it even had broken some of the boards, Owen's fall, so there was a dip in the ring and they could feel where he fell. The police should have stopped the show and they should have investigated immediately. This was a potential crime scene. There's been a death here, and, we can't just let the show go on.
Now, I think about this right now. And the question, obviously, we talked about earlier was, should the show continue? And it's a tough spot. It's a real tough spot for Vince McMahon. Now, everybody viewing at home heard that announcement. But the fans that were in the arena thought that, you know what, listen, this is crazy. He just got seriously hurt. But they did not know that Owen Hart had just tragically passed away. So I put myself in Vince McMahon's shoes right now. Now, if Vince did not travel in that ambulance with Owen Hart to the hospital, if Vince McMahon was still in the arena when this had gone down, he should have 100% come out to the ring and make that announcement. The fans in the arena should have known that Owen Hart had tragically passed away, and the show should have stopped right there. I mean, listen, folks, there are things that are bigger than wrestling. There are things that are bigger than what we see on TV, than sporting events. Look what we're going through right now with this pandemic. Look at it. People are dying on a daily basis due to the coronavirus. Now, a man just lost his life in the middle of a professional wrestling ring. The blood stains were on the canvas. And you still kept the show going? You didn't come out and think about, for 1 second, think about telling the fans that, listen, folks, unfortunately, we have to halt this event because a man just died in the middle of the ring. Not just any man, folks. We're talking about Owen Hart. We're talking about a legacy, a family with a legacy in the pro wrestling industry. A man that was incredibly talented, a man that passed away way too soon. Nevertheless, it was an individual that had just died in the middle of the ring, and you're going to continue the show. Vince, you should be ashamed of yourself right now. You should be ashamed of yourself all these years. You have to live with that, my man. And I'm telling you right now, if you were still in that arena, you should have came out and you should have stopped the show and you should have told all the fans what had just transpired and what had happened in the unfortunate news. But no, you continued the show. And it comes to mind, why? Why did he continue the show? Was it because Vince was too selfish? Or was it because Vince had to please everybody in the arena because the fans paid their quote-unquote good, hard-earned money to watch a show? You know what? I'm pretty damn sure that everybody in that arena would have understood that a man had just died in the middle of the ring. And they would have not cared about the money that they have spent on that. And you know what, Vince? You had a lot of money at that time, especially that time period. You could have reimbursed everybody, even half of the cost of the ticket for the show. Why did you continue the show? I am, looking back at that right now, I am just incredibly, as I am older and I think about this now, I am incredibly distraught. I am just highly upset at that business decision, Vince. Okay, as many others are, and especially Martha Hart and the family, Oj, and his daughter and everybody, or I could say most of the Hart family, because there are some members of the family that didn't want to comment, did not want to be on this documentary for one reason or another, but I'm glad that we got to see this. I'm glad that we got to see and hear the side of the story that we haven't heard for over 20 years. Martha Hart comes out of the silence, comes out of the dark, and talks about this Dark Side of the Ring documentary, the Owen Hart tragic incident, the passing of her husband. Okay, because folks, we're talking about a man, we're talking about a human being. Yes, he was an athlete. Yes, he was a wrestler, but he was a human. He was one of us that had just died, doing what he enjoyed doing. And he took one for the team and made that ultimate sacrifice because you know what, that day, and he spoke about it, and Ross spoke about it on one of his podcast episodes with Conrad Thompson. He spoke about Owen Hart being hesitant on doing and performing this stunt. But he did it. He did it for the business. What does that say about that man? What does it say? Owen Hart was coming down from the rafters. He was falling, and he still said to the referee, I believe it was Jim Corderas, in the middle of the ring, move out, get out of the way. So altruistic Owen Hart was. And it gets to me, folks. It gets to me as a human, as a man, that he was so selfless that he was looking out for the others, looking out for the referee as he was falling to his death. And he knew it. He just wanted to make sure that everybody else was okay, that he saved another individual's life. What does that say about the character? What does that say about Owen Hart? You speak about Owen Hart, and we have not one bad thing to say about him. There's many athletes that have talked about Owen Hart, went on the record and told us stories about Owen Hart. And the man he was a prankster, he was a jokester, he loved to laugh. There was so many layers to this individual. He was just an incredible human. Forget about an athlete, just an individual, just a human being. Owen Hart was a man that I would have loved to get to know. And it's sad. I spoke to Teddy Hart a few weeks back. He was on the Bree Combination Wrestling episode, The Curtain Call. I got a chance to speak with him. He told us an incredible story about Owen Hart, a funny story about Owen Hart, scaring him and his timing. And you get to hear that. If you want to check that out, you can go check out that interview. You can see it on this channel, the interview with Teddy Hart as he discussed himself and Owen and Davey Boy, a couple stories from when he was growing up. But you know what? Owen Hart was one of those guys that he was just a human that lightened up the room when he stepped in the room. And he's somebody that I would have loved to know, like I stated before. And you think about it. You think about Owen as a wrestler, as a performer. And yes, we want to see Owen Hart be glorified. We want to see Owen in the Hall of Fame. And that has been a question that has came to many minds. Why? Why has Owen Hart not been in the Hall of Fame? What is going on? Well, Martha Hart stated her side of the story and why, she feels that Owen should not be in the Hall of Fame and what else they are doing to glorify Owen Hart and to remember Owen Hart. And here's what she had to say in that Dark Side of the Ring documentary. Take a look.
I would never allow for Owen to be recognized by a company that actually is responsible for his death.
I would never let WWE put his name on a piece of silver and say that they got that. We have built a foundation that helps put people in homes, that helps single moms like my mom was, that let kids go to school. This is all done in his namesake. This is all got Owen Hart written all over it. This is how communities, this is how people, society remembers him. And that's how we want it to be done. Yeah, he was a wrestler, but other than that, he was bigger than that. That was just part of what he was.
Now, I think it's incredible what they're doing with the Owen Hart Foundation. But folks, the big question here, and everybody is talking about, everybody wants to know, is will Owen Hart ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? And I think a lot of people got their answer after watching this documentary, and that answer, unfortunately, is no. And that's because, you gotta think about it, folks. Why should Martha and her family give the WWE that privilege? They were ultimately responsible for this man's death. But you got to think about the fans here now for a second. Owen Hart, when you hear that name, Hart, when you hear Owen Hart, you think pro wrestling. So why can't we find a middle ground? That's what I'm saying. If they're going to induct Owen Hart in the Hall of Fame, why not make all the proceeds of that event and anything that has to do with Owen Hart moving forward, why can't they make all those proceeds go to the Owen Hart Foundation? Why? Because I think that we can find some sort of a middle ground, folks. I think if we do something like this, it's going to make the fans happy, make WWE happy, and ultimately make Martha Hart and her family happy, knowing that they did not make a dime off of his name and off of Owen Hart in general. So I think that this is something that can please everybody. If we can find something like this, if we can make this come to fruition in some capacity, okay, I think this is going to be big. It's going to be huge. Owen should be in that Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Owen Hart is a wrestler at heart. Owen Hart would have wanted to be, I feel like, in the Hall of Fame of pro wrestling because that is what he loved to do, and that's what he died doing. He did it for the business. He went out there and sacrificed himself, his feelings, for that business. And if a man could do something like that, what does that say? What does that say about how he felt about pro wrestling? You have to understand that, folks. You have to put this man in the Hall of Fame. You have to give him his rightful spot in the Hall of Fame and make all of those proceeds that you make on that Hall of Fame go to that Hart Foundation. Stop being so damn selfish, Vince McMahon, and just do it. Just make it happen. Let's make it happen. Martha, listen, I understand. I understand that after all these years, I understand your feelings as a human being. I've lost many people in my lifetime, as did many viewers right now. We've all lost somebody that we loved, that was near and dear to our hearts. But please, think about everyone overall. Think about everyone who loved your husband. Think about everyone who loved Owen Hart. Think about everybody out there. Let's do what's right now. And I feel like it's right to put him in the Hall of Fame because you know why? Forget about Vince. Forget about WWE. Hell, even forget about the fans for 1 second. What would Owen have wanted? What would Owen Hart have wanted for himself and his career? Do you not think that Owen wanted to be glorified in that light in pro wrestling? Give him his spot. Come to an agreement with WWE. Come to an agreement with Vince McMahon. Okay? And Vince, do the right thing here. If you're going to put Owen in the Hall of Fame, make all of those proceeds, every every single dollar, every cent, every penny that you earned from his name, from putting him out there and being announced going into the Hall of Fame, make every single dollar that you earn from that go to the Owen Hart Foundation. Let's make this come to fruition, folks. That is my opinion. That is what I believe. Owen Hart was an incredible athlete. I've said it in the beginning. He was underrated, and he's a man that will forever be missed and never be forgotten. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this Dark Side of the Ring recap. Owen Hart, I want you to remember Owen in a positive light. I want us to all think of Owen Hart and smile. He will not be duplicated. He will not be replicated. Owen Hart is one of a kind, and he's the King of Hearts. Owen Hart, God bless your soul. God bless your family. And thank you for all of the memories that you have given each and every one of your fans.